Hello everyone and welcome to part 4 of 5 of my coverage of the 8.1 British tech tree that is coming out in the upcoming patch. We're going to be covering 2 tanks for each tier, a medium and a heavy, and starting off with the tier 7 medium is the Comet. The Comet is a very high speed tank. There's not much armor on it, and it really is very similar to the Cromwell before it. It does suffer the same gun issues though as the Churchill 7. It really is meant to be a flanking tank, especially with the 77mm that it is equipped with. That really does make it a much better tank, as the 77 as a front-facing or a fighting tank from the front really can't help too much against these higher tiers. You do need to get around to the sides to be able to pin most tanks that you're going to be facing. It does have great suspension and can actually take quite a few jumps and slopes off hills, so don't be afraid of either climbing up hills or sliding off ledges to get better angles on your opponent. The Comet does operate really well if it is wolf packing, and it does have 1,000+ health, so that it can be survivable if it does take a hit. You're not going to be as heavily impacted as the Cromwell did if it gets hit. It does lack a little bit of punch to be truly effective, but if you play it very similar to the T-43, it does actually have potential as a flanking and a quick reaction tank. The saving grace of this is it has excellent gun depression, and this really does help it when it needs to be on a hill or on a slope, fending things off or just poking up and down, shooting at the weak points of tanks. So, moving from the Comet, we go into the Tier 7 Heavy, the Black Prince. The Black Prince really does have a terrible gun, and it is not much better than the Churchill 7. I am probably in the minority in saying that this tank is a difficult tank for this fact alone. It does have a gigantic, large health pool, though, and this is more than willing to make up for the lack of a gun. It does have the same armor and speed as the Churchill 7, but with the addition of the health, it does have that same slope, so it will be able to bounce quite a few rounds if angled properly. It is super slow, and in tier, the armor value might not be good enough, but if angled properly, the slope will make a big difference in this. It is very accurate on the move. It is a tank that you do not have to worry about standing still to fire. You can continue to move forward, pressing your advance the whole time. And again, this tank will need to be played almost the same way as the Churchill 7, as you're a support tank taking out the other assets, letting your other tanks, such as the tank destroyers, worry about dealing with the heavier objects and the heavier tanks that you'll be facing. It is decent at its tier, but it has way too little damage to be effective at higher tiers. So because of this, it is going to be a difficult grind. And again, it is my personal opinion, but I'm in the minority in saying that this tank is going to be a little bit difficult with its gun that it has and the damage and penetration that it does. Moving from the Black Prince, we go into the Tier 8s, starting off with the Centurion Mark I, which is the Tier 8 medium. This tank does have a large health pool, but very little hull armor. Now, it does have surprisingly good turret armor, and it is incredibly sloped. So you'll want to take advantage of being holed down behind hills, slopes, or anything you can, as it does have fairly decent gun depression, so it is more than makes up for the fact that you're going to only really want to expose your turret. It finally gets a good cannon, albeit a slower rate of fire than most at its tier. So, with a moderate speed for a medium, the thing does have a pretty decent turn radius, or turn rate rather, for its turret and its hull. So it's going to be very useful at getting into those little places where you can take advantage of the fact that your hull is not going to be exposed and you're only exposing your turret. It does have incredible acceleration, so this more than makes up for its moderate high-end speed. The gun depression, as I said, is decent, so this will help take advantage of your hull down. If you play it very similar to a Pershing, this thing should be able to come at you naturally, and you will not have many problems in learning how to play it. It really cannot stand up to Tier 10s, but anything else it should be more than capable of dealing with. It does have a good view range, and so it can actually make an excellent spotting tool as well. So, moving on from the Centurion, we move on to the Caernarvon, which is the Tier 8 Heavy. This tank really has no major health or armor improvements over the Black Prince, but it does have much better slope to make up for its armor. And this really does come into effect as you angle the hole in this thing, and it becomes very difficult to penetrate. Almost, it's essentially the T-32, but as British. And if you've ever played the T-32 or against the T-32, it is a very difficult tank to penetrate if properly angled. It does have a very low engine though to start off with, so this tank you do not want to play vanilla. You want to upgrade the engine as quick as you can, as it starts with a tier 5 engine and really is hampered by this. It does feature similar armor and slope turret to the Centurion, so if you have figured out how to play that tank in terms of being able to take advantage of hold down, you will do quite well. The upgraded gun is near identical to the tier 9, or rather, the upgraded guns are near identical, and the tier 9 actually is quicker aiming than the tier 8, but not much else. It is very easy to track, but it is incredibly bouncy. It does have a limited gun depression though, and that does make a difference. You do not want to try and go hold down because you will not be able to really aim down. You're better off taking advantage of an obstacle in between your hull and your turret, or you want to slant your armor so that they're getting different angle shots on you, quite improving your armor. It really is unable to contribute to tiers above it, but it is limited at its tier. It is excellent for bowling around the lower tier matches that it can get into though. So your main advantage will be bullying other tanks around that have no ability to penetrate you, whereas the high tiers you will struggle. And that is an unfortunate circumstance with this tank. Well, that covers it for the tier 7 and 8. I hope you enjoyed this episode and my opinions and trials of these tanks. Join me next time in the final part of this video, part 5 of 5, and I cover the 9s and 10s, what most people really want to find out about. Thank you, and I'll see you then.